One of my random favourite things is when West Ham players go away to play international football and they get chatty with a reporter they perhaps trust. Lucas Paqueta's done it. Thomas Souček's done it. Vladimír Coufal always seems to do it. Whenever he goes to play for Czechia, he opens his gob. And that's exactly what's happened here. We've got an interview. It's a little bit lengthy. I'm going to read it out, and myself and Gonzo are going to discuss it. He started speaking about Czech Republic's chances of going to the World Cup, because obviously this will be the last World Cup for Sufal and probably for Souček as well, who are the two most capped players in the current squad. But Sufal, in regards to West Ham, said, "I admit I'm sorry. My position is not ideal and I need to know where I am. Due to poor results, Coach Lopetegui, with whom I started to talk, left. He was fired when I was playing in the starting 11 against Liverpool and Man City. He liked my stubborn style." Who, and he's referring to Potter here, who immediately changed the formation and moved me from the side of the defence to centre back, which is a position I've never played. Despite that, I think I managed those games, but then I wouldn't have played anyway, and I got injured. And then when he was speaking about Fulham trying to sign him at the end of the January transfer window on deadline day, now obviously on deadline day, we played Chelsea. That's important. He said, "I'm torn about all of this because West Ham didn't let me go to Fulham on deadline day. I guess not many people know about this." In the dressing room after the game, I look at my phone and there are 4 missed calls from my agent plus a message, "Call me immediately." Fulham offered great conditions. "Would you like it?" his agent asked him. And I said, "Why not, if there's no use at West Ham?" And then it goes on to explain that a move to Fulham would have seen him stay in London, but West Ham wouldn't sanction his exit. And this had annoyed the right back. Sufal said, "I'll be 33 and it would have made sense, although I love West Ham and could imagine finishing my career there. As for Fulham, I would stay in the Premier League and even in London. We really like it there. My son has started playing in the West Ham Academy and is doing better than I expected. My daughter will be going to school next year. How do I explain to them we're moving to a completely different place? That is why I need to hear from West Ham so I consider what to do next." And then the reporter pointed out that there's been talk of Everton and David Moyes, and Sufal said, "When I am free, anything can happen. But my priority is England, the best league in the world. I want to prove myself week after week that I have what it takes." He also speaks about how he wanted a new contract at West Ham and he wasn't given one, and he doesn't understand why he's not been given a new contract either. So quite a lengthy interview, Gonzo, but one that I would suggest is quite revealing, but more importantly, very honest. I think you can almost sense heartbreak when you're listening to what Sufal is saying there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff in. There's a lot of fascinating stuff, really. He's. Oh, I mean, firstly, I think the first thing that surprised me was Lopetegui. We'd started to talk just before Lopetegui left. They'd started to talk. That's an odd thing to say. I don't disbelieve it, by the way. That would sort of fit with a lot of what you heard about Lopetegui. And this goes back to the whole thing with Lopetegui and Steiten. It's pointless looking for one pantomime villain. It could just be that they're both really bloody awkward with everyone and anyone. You know, it's not always going to be a good guy in any of these situations. So we heard he was a little bit more robust. I've always wondered about players and families and
You have.
schools, haven't I? And with the kids, because I do think that would pay. So I have every sympathy with that. And I've never been a great believer that just because someone's a millionaire that you're moving your kids out of school doesn't matter. It's exactly the same. They have friendships. That they're all part of groups and clubs and schools and whatever swimming club or gym club or whatever the case may be. I think it's hard to say to your child, right, we are going to up. In fact, the only reason I live here is because I won't do that. Granted, I've got someone willing to transfer me to whatever Liverpool
Fan
TV.
TV.
Yeah. I'm not talking about that, but because of what we do for a living, I don't have to live here. The only reason I do is so as my kids can see through their schooling and the friendship groups and all the stuff. So I totally get that. I totally understand all of that. moaning about changing the formation. He doesn't suit formation. Well, that is football. That ain't got nothing to do with family or anything. You're gonna have to get over that, mate. And why you haven't been offered a new deal? Well, you just haven't. That is so. I think some of it sounds a little bit over entitled. I've got to say, some of it, family stuff, is completely understandable. To be honest with you, mate.
Yeah, I think the contract thing's been going on since he arrived. Really, he came in, had a really good year, and then him and Suchek wanted new contracts.
Yeah,
And Suchek got one, and he didn't, and he's still reportedly on £35,000 a week or something, which is obviously a lot of money, but it's very low for a Premier League player. Now, today it might feel reflective of Sufal's role, which is, well, you're a bit part player now. You've just said it yourself. You only just got into the team under Lopetegui, and then he left, and then you're not in the team under Potter. And whilst you've been injured, Sufal himself said, I wouldn't have played even if I wasn't injured. So you've accepted that your role at West Ham is one of a bit part player. So your wage probably reflects that. The issue is the bit in the middle, which when you arrived until now, you were a key part of West Ham's success of qualifying for European football. And at that point, I think he was underpaid. Arguably, he still is underpaid, but I don't think his wage increase would be, he wouldn't double his wages, for example. And if he went to Fulham, as he's speaking there, was great conditions, I think was the phrase he used. Clearly, he's getting a bit of a pay rise, or he's getting a multiple year contract from Fulham, which would give him the financial security and also secure that life in London so he doesn't have to move and uproot his family away. And I think there's a lot of frustration there that he wasn't allowed to move. And I sort of get both sides here. I understand why West Ham wouldn't accept it. Now, we don't know what the offer to West Ham was. I imagine it'd be very little, though.
$1 million, $2 million.
I don't even think it'd be that much. If I had to guess, I think $500,000 maybe. It's a case of, well, his contract's running up, so we'll give you something for the inconvenience of you not having Sufal for the latter of the season. But, you know, he's nearly 33 years old, as he said. So I think I can understand why West Ham looked at him and went, nah, you're okay. We're going to reject that, because ultimately, we only have two right backs in the squad, him and Wan-Bissaka. So Wan-Bissaka got injured. We were in trouble. Somerville at this point was already injured. So the guy who might have played right wing back was out for a large period of time. I completely get why West Ham said no to it. And I also get why Sufal was frustrated, which is, well, either let me go or give me a new contract. You're doing neither at the minute. And 2 months to go of the season, he still doesn't know if we're going to give him a new deal or not. I would suggest we're not, but I think West Ham at the minute are undecided while Potter evaluates him, but he doesn't seem too hopeful he's going to get a new contract. And I think that's his biggest frustration and disappointment, that we kept him and he wanted to go. The one thing I will say, he's got nothing to apologise for. Doing at the start, he said he's sorry. He's got nothing to apologise for. I think he's come in, he's been a brilliant signing for us, really, and leaves a bit of a, when he does leave, he'll leave as a bit of a cult hero, actually. But I do think his time is naturally coming to an end at West Ham anyway. I think the opportunity to upgrade on Sufal is there. I think when he speaks about when he played under Potter in a back three, and he said he did all right. Well, I disagree with that. I don't think you did all right. I personally thought you struggled in the back three, especially Villa away in the cup. I thought he really struggled. So if we are going to persist with this back three mainly, well, where does he fit in? He said himself, I can't play in the back three. I don't play in the back three. And he's wing back, maybe not. He did also go on, though, to say that, you know, last season he got 7 assists and only Kieran Trippier got more as a defender, and he took set pieces. And I think this whole thing is just down to feeling unappreciated by West Ham.
Yeah. Look, West Ham can be, make no mistake about it, West Ham have got no problem telling the player he's surplus to requirements. None whatsoever. They can be absolutely brutal with it.
Ring up your countryman, Alex Crowell, and ask him.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think there's an element we've probably got to read the room, and there is no new contract coming. So I don't think he's in the state of, I can't believe he's that innocent that he doesn't know that he's not getting a new deal. Even if the club haven't spoken to him, which I think would not be good. I think there should be dialogue, but we've already established massive gaps in the club in terms of, it's not, we speak about negotiations recently, but there's other gaps in the club as well. Are there player liaisons? Yes, they are, but the player liaisons haven't got a clue whether someone's going to get a new contract or anything. And there we know from a player that may be left in the summer how disjointed the renewal process can be at West Ham, and that is the most diplomatic comment you're ever going to hear, really, because it was an absolute train wreck, really. We're not very good at this stuff. He will know we're not very good at this stuff, and I have every sympathy with him there. I do think he's still in a good position. I really do. If there was an offer there from Fulham, I think it will still be there because he's still going to be free. And if he really wants to stay in London, okay, that might be more difficult. He's certainly going to be able to stay in the UK. And if that's what he wants to, he'll certainly be able to at least match the wages he's on. I know it's not ideal, but he becomes attractive. I think he makes a good point when he was talking about the assists and Trippier and this, that, and the other. So the right club who play the right formation on a free transfer, okay, he might get 35, 40 grand a week again, but he probably will get £500,000, £1 million signing on fee or something like that. Certainly, I think he'd be all right. And I, it's a hard one. I think it's time for him to go. And he's really likable, and he's been a really, really good servant to West Ham. But I would also defend the club, even though I've just criticised them for something else. I don't think they're not personable. They're not good at that stuff. They're not very loving. If that's, I think if you work there, I would absolutely defend the club's right to reject Fulham's offer. I think, well, hold on a second, we're going to get, and he's covering right centre back as well. Yeah. It's not his human right to get sold. He's got a contract and he's going to have to see it out. And yeah, it's not great, but he probably is taking home 20 grand a week, which I know is for a footballer is not so great for anyone else. And he's probably is going to get £500,000, £1 million signing on fee wherever he goes. But I totally understand the kid stuff. I really do.
Well, to back up what you've just said there, actually, and to give you the quotes, what Sufal said in regards to his contract, and shed a bit more light on it, because it does feel like West Ham have done him dirty a little bit. Sufal says, this is in regards to, so if you remember last January, he could have went to the Bundesliga. I think it might be even been Bayer Leverkusen that was after him, and Moyes said, no, I want to keep him. And then he got back into the team because Moyes rang him up when he was playing for Czech. I said, look, I don't want you to go anywhere. And he said, okay, right. But what West Ham did was exercised a clause in his contract. So Sufal was almost looking forward to being out of contract last summer, but there was a clause in that contract which West Ham could trigger at any point to add on an additional year. And we activated that clause. So we gave him an additional 12 months just like that. He had no option. So he doesn't get to renegotiate or anything. But speaking about that, Sufal says, I still regret that. Last season, I played the most minutes of all, and I also made 7 assists. In the entire Premier League, only Kieran Trippier from Newcastle is better among defenders who also take set pieces. I say openly that I deserve to negotiate much better terms. The option was also supposed to be a new contract. That was the agreement. He said, Suk, obviously it's Souček, Suk and I was discussing this recently. I would have provided for 4 more generations of Sufals, maybe even more. We didn't even have to talk about money. But in the back of my head, it's nagging at me. Would you want that? Would you want to lower your ambitions? That I would still want to be on par with the best, most skilled and fastest footballers in the world. I would like to continue to push them every day in training, to work with absolute passion and leave exhausted every time. Why? I don't want to have any problems. So that's what he said in regards to. So basically, West Ham, according to Sufal, West Ham sort of promised to negotiate a new contract, and
we've heard that. We've heard that before.
Yeah,
and I would believe that. And I think if you're promised something, we've all done it. You've all, when you've got a bit of money coming, you spend it in your head.
Yeah.
We've all done it. Let's be fair. So I do understand that, and I do have sympathy on that. And yeah. But it's also a difficult one if you're just a regular person, man. I mean, you listen. You're doing well if you can just look after your children and pay for them to do stuff. I mean, to when you start talking about fourth generation, your children's children, and you were looking to make sure that they were financially happy, which is what he's talking about with fourth generation. Yeah, I mean, it would have been nice. He'll be all right. He's clearly very upset about it.
Yeah.
He really is. But West Ham are a football club, and they I'm listening to myself. I sound like Simon Jordan here. West Ham have got the right. They do have the right to not to have to play someone in the team. But he's quite right to say, and he's quite right at the time when his contract's up there. Look, this is what I do. This is what I'm good at. But let's be fair. Lopetegui was probably saying, "Don't give him a new deal," and probably Potter is probably saying, "Don't give him a new deal." West Ham would probably be a bit silly if we did. But as always, we can handle these things far better. We are not good at this stuff, and unfortunately, there are a few well-meaning people at the club who probably do say, "Look, we probably do this to you," but when it gets to the some of the decision makers, it just doesn't happen. And there's precious little communication. I can't say it any more. There's big gaps. There's big holes in the way that the club is run. And that, the family club. Actually, I heard Troy Deeney say today for West Ham are a family club. We're not. There are plenty of good intentioned people within the club, but actually, it's very disjointed. Probably is like a family then, actually, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the bit that sits uneasy with me. If we've said we'll give him a new deal and we haven't followed through on our word, that's the bit that upsets me more. I understand the footballing side of it. I understand why we might move on from Sufal this summer. I personally would have given him a new contract. However, if 12
Sorry, you
months
would
ago,
or you wouldn't?
I wouldn't give him a new contract. But however, if we've, as a club, whoever it might be, it might have been Tim Steidten that said it, but whoever it was that said, we're going to give you a new deal, don't worry. I think you've got to follow through on that a little bit. And we did it with Hogbona 24 months ago. We were going to give him a new deal. He got that injury. And we went, don't worry, we're going to see you right. We're going to give you that new contract and we're going to get you back to playing. And we did. We followed through on it. And that was a good thing. And this is where the club, and not just West Ham United, other clubs will be the first one to cry about lack of loyalty. But then, well, you're also guilty of displaying a lack of loyalty. You promised someone a new contract and you're not giving him one. And I believe, Sufal, like you said, there's enough evidence there as to and examples of West Ham doing this in the past. And also, if I was to say to you, if a West Ham player was to claim something, who are you most likely to believe out the entire squad? You'd probably go Sufal, Souček, maybe Bowen.
Yeah.
They're the ones that if they spoke, I'd go, I believe him. Regardless of what they say, I believe him because of the type of person they are. It's got nothing to do with their footballing ability. It's how they represent themselves on the pitch and off the pitch. I think he's been a wonderful ambassador to West Ham United, but at this point, I think it's the right thing for him to do is to move on. But I do think this could have been handled a lot better by West Ham because A, he's leaving angry, and B, you're wanting his best mate to stay at the club as well.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets a little bit dangerous because Souček will know all the ins and outs of what's going on with Sufal. And if you're wanting him to stay, well, I think you're almost taking advantage of Souček being a nice person to some extent because you've done his best mate over and Souček will stay because he loves West Ham. Just a bad situation, a bad ending to what has been a very good signing, a good player. And like I said, I think he'll leave a bit of a cult hero. But it'll be under a dark cloud now because of how West Ham have handled this. It's just unnecessary. But unfortunately, a regular occurrence by those that manage this club.
It is a regular occurrence. And as I say, there's a lot of sympathy for him. He's that statement, he's mentioned his family 3 times. So he's showing, but there's and when he's talking about money, I do get that impression. He's not talking about he wants a 5th Lamborghini. It is for his family. And he's probably not, to be fair.
Yeah. And he still wants to be the lowest paid player in the squad. It's just a bit closer to the second lowest paid.
Yeah. And he, to be fair, he has not got the sort of money that will run a fleet of Lamborghini. So I think I do understand that, and particularly what he's talking about with his family. I totally get it, and I do understand it. But also, I do understand it's not the club's responsibility to make sure his children's children are okay. And if come the end of it, so I wasn't particularly happy to getting rid of Ben Johnson. And the way we did that, to use that as example. But the truth of the matter is, I would have kept him on. He wouldn't have played this season because Aaron Wan-Bissaka is that good. And I think that the trouble is he's got two gripes. One of them's footballing and one of them's family/money related. The footballing one, well, the trouble is you could have that new deal. You still wouldn't get in ahead of Wan-Bissaka. And if you played right centre back, he's even admitted he didn't know how to play it. You wouldn't get in ahead of Tadibo. So you ain't playing, mate. And I think that's as harsh as that is. And as harsh as it is, and I do wish the club would do these things better. If we end up next season with Kyle Walker-Peters as well, and it's Kyle Walker, I know they can play in different positions, Wan-Bissaka, Walker-Peters. If we end up with our first two choices of Walker-Peters and Wan-Bissaka, and we've actually gone from Ben Johnson and Vladimír Coufal, footballing wise, we've done the right thing, you know. So I as a personal thing, I just hope he gets the deal, and I hope he can do what he wants to do for his family, and I hope for his last 2 or 3 years as a professional footballer, he can get that money. But I do believe he'll get it. I do believe that he will get on that signing on fee. By the time he's finished his career, he'll be able to go back with the Czech Republic, and all right, even if not, he can't live like a king. He will be able to live a very, very comfortable remainder of his life, and his children will be able to go to the best schools that he can possibly afford to put them into. So I hope he'll be all right.
There we go. Right, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us. If you've enjoyed this video, please drop a like on it by clicking thumbs up button. Subscribe to Hammers Chat, myself and Gonzo. Catch you in a bit.